In this video, we're going to talk about the other two terms and definitions that I really want to make sure you understand. So these are the other key ideas from section 13.1. Within descriptive statistics, when we're talking about data, there's really two types of data, qualitative and quantitative. The big difference between qualitative and quantitative is that qualitative is categorical in nature, where quantitative is numerical in nature. Just to give you an example, if I was to poll people on the type of shoes that they were wearing, I might get responses such as flip-flops, boots, gym shoes. Those are all types of shoes, categorical if you will. However, if I was to poll those same people on the number of pairs of shoes that they own, I would get numerical responses such as 2, 5, 37. That would be quantitative in nature. So that's your numerical data. Okay? So if the data is categorical in nature, we call it qualitative. If it's numerical, it's called quantitative. Listed below are 10 variables, 10 different things of interest. I'd like you to read through them and decide whether you think that it is quantitative or qualitative data that we're dealing with in each of the situations. Please pause the video so that you can have a few minutes to read through these and determine your answer. Then resume the video and I will go through the answers and discuss why each one is considered what it is. In this first case, we have the number of parking tickets administered in a day. As many of you probably suspect, that is quantitative. It is numerical in nature. Trash bags specified as small, medium, large. Well, that's categorical. That would make it qualitative. Number of letters on the page of a book. Well, numerical in nature makes it quantitative. Height of a student. Now here's an interesting one. Some of you may have said quantitative, while others said qualitative. It would really boil down to how you thought about it and how you justified it. How can we justify this as quantitative? Well, certainly if you're thinking of the exact height of a student, say in inches or centimeters or even feet in inches, you're giving an exact numerical measurement of the height, which would thus mean we're dealing with quantitative data. However, maybe you were thinking of students as short or tall. Well, now you're giving it a category, which would then make it qualitative. So I know it might be a little confusing that it could be one or the other. It just really boils down to how you're thinking about it. Okay, I do promise in exams and things like that, it will not be quite so ambiguous. But in this case, since we're discussing it, it's important to realize that it just boils down to how we're thinking about it. Had I specified this as height of a student in centimeters, that would have made it quantitative all the way. Okay. Social Security number. This is another interesting one. Many people see Social Security number and automatically think quantitative because it's numerical in nature. Thing is, it's actually qualitative, and here's why. Think about the purpose of a Social Security number. It is simply to distinguish one individual person from another. In other words, it's used for identification. It really wouldn't matter if you had a Social Security number or Social Security letters, as long as that combination of letters distinguished you from someone else. So while it is numbers that appear in the Social Security number, they're not used in a quantifying manner. Because they're used for identification, we really do consider this qualitative data. Jumping down to G then, a phone number. Even though it's numerical, I understand it's not being used in a quantifying manner. So this is actually qualitative data. The only thing the numbers do is distinguish one line from another. Would it really matter if you had a phone number or phone symbols, if you will, triangles and circles and squares? Okay, so when numbers are being used for identification purposes, they are actually qualitative. Qualitative. All right. Going back up to number of pills in a bottle, that would be quantitative. Attitude towards the procedure, quantitative. But again, this is an interesting one. Oh, excuse me. This is actually qualitative. Attitude towards a procedure. If you're thinking good, bad, indifferent, certainly that is categorical in nature, and that makes it qualitative. The thing about qualitative data is If what we're working with is qualitative, there really isn't a whole lot we can do with it. When we come to class, you'll see the limitations of qualitative data and the only two things we can do with it. However, when data is numerical in nature, when it's quantitative, there's so much more analysis we can do with it. And so we much prefer quantitative data. Have you ever taken a survey that has asked you for your opinion on a scale from 0 to 10? Maybe being 0 completely disagree, 10 totally agree, and then that sliding scale in between? What a survey like that is trying to do is take qualitative data, your attitude, and quantify it with numbers. Because if they have numerical data, there's so much more analysis they can do. So it is very possible to turn qualitative data into quantitative. And that's something that you talk more in depth about in a full statistics class. However, for our purposes, if it's qualitative, I'll show you what we can do with it, and that will be it. All right. So attitude towards a procedure, most of us say qualitative. Depth of an incision. This is another one that could be considered quantitative or qualitative. If you were thinking the exact depth of the incision in terms of inches or centimeters, then it's quantitative. However, if you were thinking a deep incision, a shallow incision, then it would be qualitative. Score on an exam. Again, if you're thinking in terms of percent, then most definitely quantitative. However, what if you were thinking ABC? That's categorical, and it would be qualitative. So I'm not trying to confuse you. Really the big distinction is numerical data is quantitative, categorical data is qualitative. I want you to see, though, that it's possible, depending on how we think of data, it could be one or the other. And that's really helpful because if data is qualitative in nature, we can change it to quantitative and do a whole lot more with it. Okay, which is what we will be discussing in class.